Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 93 of Super Switch Headz, the premier Nintendo podcast on all of the internet. My name is David Howe.
My name is Matthew Stoner.
My name is Patrick Nisley.
And oh boy, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest with us this evening. Austin Young joins us again on the podcast. Hello, Austin.
Thanks for having me, y'all.
Oh, yes.
Glad
very
to be
nice
back.
to have you on again. Is this number 3? I was talking about it with Sasha earlier. Is this
Number 3, I think
number
you're
3?
right.
Very
Yeah.
good. The killer 3. Thank you for coming on, Austin. We're having you on today because we're going to be talking all about Fire Emblem 101. We're taking you to Fire Emblem school, ladies and germs. We are going to be discussing
Take me away.
the whole history of the Fire Emblem series. This is, of course, because Nintendo just put out the original NES Fire Emblem game on the eShop with a brand spanking new translation. We'll give you our impressions of that, along with kind of walking you through the timeline of the Fire Emblem games. If Three Houses is your first game, this is a great episode to listen to. It'll kind of be able to tell you what to play next. In addition to that, we got lots of news. There's lots of speculation involving a lady named Metroid, some Halo Infinite news that just dropped. Lots of the sour on Nintendo news that we've been having as kind of a run recently on the episode. Not the best time to be a fan of Nintendo. We'll break into all this stuff and a whole lot more throughout the episode. But before we get into it, how's everybody doing? We have a good week.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good.
Yes, same here. Pretty good so far.
That's good to hear.
Just coasting along.
Hell yeah. That's
Yeah.
what I'm all about. I'm very excited. I for the first time in about a decade, I've upgraded my TV. I'm now the owner of a brand spanking new OLED TV, which does 4K, and it's going to be great for my Xbox Series S. It's kind of a joke, but it actually does look really nice playing Tetris Effect on that thing. So it's nice to finally have a respectable TV as a so-called gamer.
You got those deep blacks in that
Deep
OLED.
blacks, infinite Halo Infinite blacks. Yeah, it's really nice. Yeah, it's been a nice upgrade. It's been long needed since my eyes have been going.
L block looking sharp.
Yeah, the first thing I played was Super Mario Bros. 35, followed by Picross. So I'm already putting it through its paces.
Cool. Well, time for some shout outs then.
Yeah.
Real briefly. Pokemon Jeremy loved our artwork, so kudos to Matt for the artwork on this idea, I think.
The
too.
Thanos snap art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our
I think
last episode.
I commented on Discord that it's the first time that I felt like I was making art specifically with an YouTube audience in mind.
Yeah. All you needed is some like big, bold Arial font being like, what?
Yeah, and my face reacting like, huh?
Yeah, Poggin.
To explain a little bit, if you didn't listen to last week, we talked about all the things disappearing in March. So there was a Thanos snap art image for that episode.
Absolutely. We're trying to reach out to the kids.
And then also, maybe, David, you can explain this one briefly. AVK, a friend of the show and sometimes guest, shouted us out for something that was really sweet.
Yeah, on Instagram, Digital Gardens, aka AVK, posted a little Instagram story about how him and then a friend of mine, Courtney from high school, met through Switch Headz and now are dating and seem to like each other quite a bit. And it was kind of thanking Switch Headz for bringing them together. So that's the wholesome bit of news for the day.
Well, we've done it. Let's wrap it up. I think we've done it.
Right?
I think it's time to call it a run.
Put up
93 episodes.
Put up the American flag. Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished.
Where's an aircraft carrier?
Good stuff. We'd love to hear from you, listener, if you're out there, and if you're dating somebody you met through our podcast, please let us know.
Please let us know. We'll
That's
shout
the
you
next.
out.
That's the next season for Switch Headz of just love stories. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll yeah. Never mind.
Yo, this is my dream. I love being a matchmaker. So let me know if you're single. I'll do a matchmaker. We'll do a Switch Headz make out.
If you're single and ready to Pringle, hit us up.
Nice. Okay. We should move on to the news and rumors. We got a lot of them, like you said. So there's been some speculation of Samus coming to Fortnite because Fortnite is doing a bounty hunter thing, right? This season or this whatever they call it. And some major characters from other consoles and also the Mandalorian are coming to Fortnite. So Kratos from PlayStation's God of War games is also confirmed. And there's some speculation about Master Chief, I think, as well.
Yeah, I think that's supposed to potentially be a Game Awards reveal.
Yeah, and maybe even Kratos was supposed to not happen so soon, but it did or something.
Right.
I can't remember if that was like a leaked thing that they then just went ahead and let out or not. But
there are alleged leaks that say that, but no one really knows for sure. If Master Chief is revealed at the Game Awards, I'd probably be like, man, this probably should have been released with Kratos at the same time. It was probably a mistake. But man, I'd love to see at the Game Awards potentially, like that big 3 moment, like a couple years ago, whenever it was like all the heads of PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo all out on the same stage. Like if it was Samus, Master Chief, and Kratos all together, that would be a magical moment.
So that obviously also fuels some speculation about Fortnite coming to Smash and stuff, but I don't know if that means anything. But it would be weird to. Do y'all think? What do you think? Does Samus showing up in Fortnite? Do you care? Is that cool or like I don't know?
I'd be very surprised if any Nintendo property shows up in Fortnite, just because I don't think Nintendo has a very or any relationship with Epic.
I have to disagree with your police work there, Lou, because Nintendo actually put out a Fortnite themed Switch.
And they did tweet out about this event, which doesn't mean anything.
So they got tweet and they got hardware.
One tweet.
Oh, okay.
One tweet about Fortnite.
Who's the cop now?
yeah, I'm sorry to ever invite the comparison between you and a member of the armed forces, but I would say I think that Nintendo actually cares more about Fortnite than they care about Metroid. So
that might be true. That might be.
That's kind of where I stand on that. But I would love to see Samus in Fortnite. I think it would be really cool. It would make a lot of sense to me. And yeah, I think they've dipped their toes into it. I think they're all in. I think Fortnite really fits Nintendo's aesthetic anyway, so yeah, I think it would be awesome.
Well, we'll see if we get Samus. And
sorry, I called you a cop, Matt. I'm just really sorry.
No, it's okay.
We'll see.
It was a Fargo quote.
Yeah, it's a good quote. We'll see.
I don't know what that means. Can I just say it's a Fargo quote? No, someone gets it.
It's from the 4th season.
So we'll see if Master Chief makes it into Fortnite too. But we do know that Master Chief's new game, Halo Infinite, they just announced the night we're recording this that it is going. They gave us a release window. As we all may recall, it was supposed to come out this year with the launch of the Xbox Series X Pipe S, but it is going to be coming out next fall, 2021, which is a year after, which is great. I'm glad that they aren't just pushing it to, they're not rushing it or whatever.
Yeah, I agree.
But that is kind of interesting that they thought as recently as however long ago that was, a few months ago, that it was going to come out now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of wild, but yeah, it's good. I mean, it clearly wasn't ready from what they showed. And in that blog post, they talk a lot about how they all dealt with the criticism from fans. You know what I mean? They're like, we sat down and had meetings about exactly what it was that people had issues with. And so it's you like to hear that stuff. And it's nice that Microsoft isn't forcing them to release early,
Yeah. Anything that you saw about this, Matt? Are you?
I'm just excited that there's a release window, any kind of news, and especially positive news. So in the 343 blog posts, they show some pictures of multiplayer, which is the first time that we've seen any glimpse of multiplayer, which is the main staples of Halo. So I'm really excited to see that and some of the returning skins and aesthetic from previous Halo. So there's a sniper skin and a rocket launcher. that's really nice to see some of that old school throwback stuff.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
They also said that Halo Infinite will be part of the flight program, kind of their beta testing that they've done before. So hopefully there's a flight in May. That's what I would be speculating.
Over Game Pass or something, maybe.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, that'd be great. Put it out on the Switch.
15 frames per second.
Put out the version that they showed at that press event earlier this year on the Switch. That'll run just fine.
Give us Halo Infinite Craig edition.
We've talked about this a lot, but Persona 5 Strikers is officially now coming out February 23rd of next year. There's been a lot of leaks for this, including some this week. And then today, the day we're recording this, they confirmed it. So if you're looking forward to playing a Persona game, maybe not the Persona game you wanted, but on the Switch, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because it used to be called Persona 5 Scramble. I guess it is in Japan. But the new title makes me think it's a soccer game. But still exciting. Glad to finally have some Persona content on the Switch.
And that is the Warriors game, right? Yeah.
So it's a Koei Tecmo game.
I didn't even absorb that they changed the name. That's how.
No, it's cool.
They did.
No, I didn't see anybody else talking about it online either. I was like, did they just pull a fast one on everyone but me?
I think they did because it's so similar of a name. And I also there've been leaks about this game. I'm kind of like, okay, finally, we know that Strikers is coming.
Well, it's like, I think in Japan it's called Persona 5 Scramble: The Phantom Strikers. Okay. So it's like they just kind of consolidated it. Yeah,
fair enough. Moving on, in Europe, there's a new Switch bundle that comes with Ring Fit where you can get it digitally, which is cool because it's one of those games that I wish you had the option for digitally. And we haven't seen a bundle with Ring Fit, but man, they should do that here in the States too. That's totally a smart idea.
As somebody who's gone all digital on their Switch, for some reason, it really bothers me that for Labo and Ring Fit, I have to pop the cartridge in every single time. It's just like messing with my OCD. I've come to accept it at this point, but I would have liked it if they just sold it with just the thing instead of the cartridge. Same with Labo, you know. I think Mario Kart Home Circuit did it like that, which I hope they continue to do that.
I'm a big fan of options and also games like Ring Fit where I might want to play a little bit. I don't know, just those are the games I want digitally, like to reduce the friction.
Although, if it's too much effort to get up and put the cartridge in for Ring Fit, are you really going to be playing Ring Fit anyway?
Right. I mean, that's
just think of it as part of your workout regimen.
Right.
Going to get the cartridge from the shelf.
I actually heard that argument when this came up, which is like, don't you have to get out the strap and all that stuff anyway? Just keep it right next to that. Fair point. But it is a game I wish I had digitally. I still say. I thought this was interesting. So the NPD, which is the National Purchase Diary here in the States, they do a lot of consumer research and stuff. Matt Piscatella, who's part of them, said that they put out like a big report called 2020 Evolution of Entertainment. And one little factoid he dropped on Twitter I thought was cool was that gamers spent an average of 15 hours per week playing games in 2020, which is up from 13 hours from last year. So not surprising to see that number go up this year.
Yeah, why do you think that is? That's so weird.
I'm honestly surprised it's not higher, right?
It only went up that little bit, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, these numbers, they didn't ask me, but anytime there's this kind of stuff, but I know there's statistics and all that, and it exists. But I'm always like, how do they know these things? But I just think that's a little interesting, and I wonder what else is in that report. I'm sure you have to pay for it, but. That's cool.
Yeah, I think it would have gone up another % if they'd asked you, Patrick.
It probably would have, actually. So PAX announced some dates for their conferences for 2021. A little ambitious, maybe. The first one is PAX East in June of next year. And when this happened, a lot of people were like, ooh, are people going to be ready to go to events in June? I don't know. We'll see what happens.
So it's a physical event.
Yeah, this is they're going back to the Boston Convention Center.
Yikes!
And they must be anxious to get these events scheduled.
Well, yeah, it's their whole lifeblood.
Yeah,
as a company, but
so our
lifeblood is non-COVID.
Is literally lifeblood.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen.
But
Yeah.
I saw no PAX South.
Yeah, I think because that one usually happens in January, so they probably don't think that's possible. Though there was
Yeah.
also speculation that when we were there that they might be changing that one, so we'll see.
Yeah.
But I did want to mention this too. I almost wanted to talk about this a few weeks ago when it happened, but ReedPop is the company that owns. They're one of the like parent companies of PAX, and they run US Gamer, which I have recently come to enjoy. It's like a website, another review website, and they laid off a bunch of people at US Gamer, some like the head writers and stuff. And so I don't know. I'm not sure how I'm feeling about ReedPop and PAX right now.
Do you think the like PAX money was going into, US Gamers employees?
Yeah, it makes
paychecks,
you wonder, is that like where was stuff like these events supporting that? But I don't
It's
know.
gotta be. Yeah.
There's been a lot of layoffs actually in some independent or just like online games journalism, which is funny because we hear about how games are doing so well and games journalism was being added by some major publications, but oh well.
Real quick, do you guys think that there will be a digital E3 this year?
2021? Man, that's a tough call. Yeah.
They've had a year to figure out how to do it, right?
Yeah.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Because I missed it, man. I missed having it.
I
this
missed
year,
that
even
week
if it-
too. I really hope that it comes back.
When
Yeah.
this was like March through May, we were all like, we don't really need E3 anyway. And then now everybody's like, maybe we do.
Don't it always seem to know what you don't know what you got to know.
And now we get into, as David foreshadowed, the Nintendo Sucks portion of the podcast that we do every week now.
Is that our running bit for season 3?
If Nintendo keeps it up. So to start with is one that happened today, and I don't know how widespread this is, but somebody who puts a lot of Nintendo music up on YouTube indicated that they received a bunch of takedown requests by Nintendo of Japan. So all these YouTube videos they had of, music from games that you can't really find anywhere unless you have those games.
Are you ready? I'm going to list off the copyright claims that Nintendo
Oh
have.
my God. No.
Ultimate Koopa Clear, Super Mario 64. Ultimate Koopa, Super Mario 64. Koopa's Rose, Super Mario 64.
I'm putting the kibosh on that.
This is one of my favorite bits.
David, do you not like listicles? I thought
Hey man, me shutting you down is part of the bit.
It is part of the bit.
I guess you want to get it. It's a Fargo quote.
I love how they talk about listicles in Fargo.
Well, I don't know. This just happened, so I haven't had time to search my feelings about it. Nintendo, I don't know that I feel like this is as bad as some of the other things going on, but also I wish that Nintendo put their music on Spotify or YouTube or something so that we could listen to it and get them their, ad money.
There are, I think, like the Super Mario 64 soundtrack is on Spotify, but it's up in a really weird way. A lot of like game companies, when they put their music on Spotify, it's either like the musician name is like all in Japanese and it's impossible to search for, or it's like they're uploaded as individual tracks or whatever. They just make it really difficult. So it's like YouTube has always been the go-to place for video game music. Hopefully this is like a one-off thing and like some YouTuber just really pissed off Nintendo and they don't start doing this en masse. But I don't know. We'll see. Either way, this is going to really fuck with my relaxing Nintendo music to fall asleep to playlist that I put on.
I fear the guns are pointed at the numerous Xenoblade soundtrack to sleep to on YouTube.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start illegally downloading them now.
Yeah. Worth it.
So that's a bit of a bummer. And again, it's this sort of thing where they're doing stuff where we don't really have, you're taking away things that they aren't providing themselves. Also in Europe, I think it's a group of 9 now, consumer groups in different countries in the European Union have sent a request to Nintendo to like, what are you going to do about Joy-Con drift? We're getting a lot of where they're compiling complaints about it to deal with that. And I imagine they're probably getting lots of complaints because Joy-Con drift sucks. Austin's had a particular bad run of Joy-Con drift. How many Joy-Cons have you had with drift?
Well, 3. It's a complicated story involving exchanges at Game Stop. That was a mistake.
Right.
Yeah,
because they just give you another one that already has drift.
That's got to be a fucking minefield, right? Like finding a good used Joy-Con. I would never buy a used Joy-Con.
Yeah.
Well, and so they tell you, well, you have 72 hours to bring it back and exchange it until you get one that works. And so I tried to play that game for like 2 weeks.
And all of them have drift. Yeah.
I'm imagining that to the Benny Hill music, like sped up.
They've just got out. You just sit there in the store. Nope. Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, and I remember like to get 2 pinks you could trade with somebody or whatever. It's like I'm not trading a Joy-Con with somebody for that same reason. Yeah. So we've talked a lot about Joy-Con drift. We'll move on, but relatedly to Joy-Con somewhat, there was an individual who started like a Indiegogo to raise some money in light of Etika's passing. And if we don't know, Etika was a content creator who was a Nintendo fan.
Bad boy of Nintendo.
And in particular started a group that he dubbed the Joy-Con Boys, which is sort of related to our name is a little bit based off of that.
Yeah, the Facebook group was originally Switch Boys, changed to Switch Headz to be gender neutral.
And so he raised a bunch of money through Indiegogo to make these, with the sales proceeds going to a mental health organization because Etika committed suicide. And Nintendo has apparently sent him a cease and desist, and now he has just a big bucket of these Joy-Con shells that he can't sell or send out or whatever. So
yeah,
it's a bit of a bummer.
This one really hurt, I think. I mean, it's like at the end of the day, it's Nintendo. They're a corporation. They were protecting their IP,
Joy-Con in particular, the term.
Well,
right?
that I think a lot of what they had pointed out was the logo, like the Joy-Con Boys logo
of the
like
Switch,
utilizes the Switch logo, right? It's like kind of a play on the Switch logo, and that to them was trademark copyright infringement. But it's like, man, this is not good optics. Stopping people from giving money to mental health awareness charities is like some dystopian shit. You know what I mean? Like that's shit you don't want to be, that's not good PR. You know what I mean? So hopefully this could have been something they could have either waived or turned a blind eye to or read the room a little bit more. But
yeah,
man, yeah, it's tough, especially because it's like in memory of Etika, who was like, it's like you have to think like, is part of the reason they did this is because they never really liked how Etika represented their company. I wouldn't blame them. He was a problematic guy when he was alive, but also like had a heart of gold. So it was like, I don't know. This one's tough.
Yeah,
and bad.
And in further Nintendo Sucks news, as we've talked about, they pulled support for the Melee event that was online because of the use of Slippy, the mod, to have Melee online. And in sort of support of the Melee community and the Smash community, the Splatoon community was using names in an official tournament that was supposed to be live streamed by Nintendo about in support of the Melee, like free Melee and stuff like that's become a hashtag. And Nintendo pulled the plug on live streaming the event. The event still took place, but there was no way to watch it. And that also kind of hurts because it's like they're just not letting, they don't want it. They're just making things worse. It feels like, I don't know how to say it. It's like the
Streisand effect. Are you familiar?
I've heard of it.
So the Streisand effect is basically like there was this really unflattering picture of Barbra Streisand that was on the internet, and she did she like hired lawyers and everything to like do their best to like remove the pictures of Barbara Streisand from the internet. But then of course that just resulted in a million more people posting that terrible picture of Barbara Streisand online. And it's the same, it's the same thing here. It's like a hydra. You cut off its head, a whole bunch grow in its place.
And it also just, it's cool that this Splatoon community did this, but it also just makes you think that Nintendo may now stop doing Splatoon events or like cut back their support of that, which was already, threadbare. So
do you really think they would stop all Splatoon stuff?
Not stop it all, but just the same sort of like, we're not going to sponsor as many things. You know what I mean? Like, kind of leave them in the same situation that Smash is in. Maybe not this exact same because, I think Splatoon is meant to be played or, they in their minds, but probably not at a high competitive. I don't know. They want it to be a fun kids game too, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
And if people are using it as a platform, they don't like that.
Man, that's a shame because like the Splatoon community is like very non-toxic, as far as like competitive Nintendo game communities are concerned. Like the Smash community can be pretty fucking toxic. We saw that pretty hugely earlier this year and then just generally. But the Splatoon community has always seemed so chill. Yeah. It's a real shame.
That's just me speculating. I have no idea if that's true or not, but I just anything that gives them bad press, they seem to want to not do, which like you said, creates more bad press, but like
yeah.
I don't know.
Matt, what's your take on this stuff?
I think it's just, if I'm Nintendo, I'm like, I have to protect my IP at all costs.
You though?
I think that's the bad thing of like, it's such maybe a black and white decision making of like, if someone uses our content in a YouTube video, we have to take it down. If someone uses our content to make a fan creation game, we have to take it down. It doesn't seem like there's any wiggle room to have this legally gray existence of a Nintendo property. And because of that there's no window of opportunity for fans to use the content, creatively without making money, makes Nintendo look like the bad guy. But even though they're coming from a place of protecting their IP, but your reality just doesn't work, making those black and white decisions.
I think that's, for me, it's like reality doesn't align with what they want to do, right? Like you make something, it goes out into the world, people share it and use it in the ways you don't expect. And that's part of creating things. And they're trying to hold on. And they're also just seemingly living in the past. Thankfully, they got rid of what was the program on YouTube where only certain people could show things?
Like the Nintendo Creators Program, I think.
That now anybody can theoretically do a YouTube video or whatever and show their footage, or stream their games or whatever. But this just feels like similar thing. Hopefully in 5 years, they'll allow tournaments to happen or semi-support them or something. But like, I don't know.
And Nintendo, this is not like a new thing. For Nintendo, like, in the 90s, Nintendo was like known for being like fucking cutthroat. You know what I mean? Like, that
they've always been litigious and
super. And, controlling the market and like really they were this kind of big monolithic bully, like that was throughout the gaming industry that was kind of seen, even going as far as like how much people could actually make from their games. So it's like, it's just kind of been this recent resurgence where people are like, oh shit, that is like still the case, even though they're not as like publicly shadowy as they and like overtly shadowy as they were in the 90s. It definitely still is there. It's making it pretty hard to defend them.
Definitely.
I mean, not that we do on this show. I mean, like this is a Nintendo podcast because we love their games and the kind of culture and around their products. But we're always we'll always hold them to task. Not that it does anything, but it's like,
well, I think hopefully it does. I think that the more noise, and I'm, to an extent, right? Like, we
know Reggie listens to this and we know he shares it with Sakurai and a lot of people.
Hello, Sakurai.
Austin, do you have any thoughts on all this negative Nintendo stuff or?
Mostly, and I think y'all covered this last week, is the Switch, the Smash situation was a creative solution to social distancing, and the fact that there is no official solution from Nintendo for playing that game online. So it's a shame that I think that creative solution by the fans was not celebrated.
Yeah, you right. I saw this in response to one of these mini issues. Somebody tweeted out, imagine a different timeline where Nintendo celebrated their fans, like, efforts and stuff, and they made some fake tweets where it's like, oh, it's such a cool fan art, such a cool fan game you made, and stuff like that, which you see other companies sometimes doing.
Yeah, I was going to say, you don't have to imagine too hard. Just look at Sega, right?
Yeah.
Sega supports fan projects. They support fan art. They hire fans to make their games. You know what I mean? When they show that they can do it better than Sega themselves. It's weird to say, but Nintendo should really take a cue from Sega on this one.
There's so much more I feel like I could say here, but we should probably move on. Is there anything else on all this? No.
I mean, just generally, the more that I think about it, I was like, okay, where I'm aligning with like a $1 billion corporation, and I'm aligning with the games and the content that they create. And it's weird to side with a giant corporation that makes billions of dollars, but I still enjoy their content. What I would like Nintendo to see, as I said earlier, to see some wiggle room with using their content, something that Disney has done with Star Wars, recognizing, cosplay groups like the 501st, and having a line of delineation between when a group of people or an event represents their brand and when it doesn't, and saying this is not sponsored by Nintendo, but we recognize that it's part of the community, and having a certain language to say when it's Nintendo sponsored and Nintendo recognized, or neither. That kind of language I feel is important to differentiate between the consumer and the average person playing games.
Well, this is the last episode called Super Switch Heads. We are now fuck Nintendo heads.
One thing Nintendo arguably did that's cool, I guess, is Dragon Quest 11S and Dragon Quest Builders 2 are now had a price drop. So if you had your eye on those games, might be a good time to pick them up. They're $50 instead of $60. Not like a huge deal, but happened. So
I think it puts them at parity with the other platforms now that they're out on.
Probably why they did it.
At least closer. Yeah.
This week is the Game Awards. So if you're listening to this in a timely fashion on the 10th, I think we're going to try to have some sort of watch party over Discord or Zoom. So join our Discord and there'll be some news there. We'll all at least be watching it live and in some fashion chatting about it. So
yeah, it'll probably be over Discord, but we should have some sort of event or something up on our Facebook group as well. So make sure you join those. We'll give you some information at the end of the episode on how to do that.
Yeah, and there'll probably be some cool new release announcements and all that, which we'll talk about next week. And then one game that's coming out also in a day or two here is Cyberpunk 2077. Wow, this has been creating kind of a big gaming news stir. It's getting like decent reviews, good reviews, but also critical reviews because apparently it's pretty buggy. There's some other issues we'll get into. Though I think a lot of these people are reviewing the game without the day one patch, but it sounds like the amount of bugs there are, there's no way a day one patch is going to fix all of them.
Well, I mean, the day one patch is supposed to be like 60 something gigs, so it could. It seems like it's going to be. They say it's going to be a whole different game.
It's crazy
by the time the day one patch comes out.
So that'll be interesting to see the difference there. In particular, I really enjoy this person's work in general, so I recommend checking them out. But Gene Park over at the Washington Post had a really, I thought, thoughtful, interesting review of this game that I'd recommend check out if you're interested. Sitting at like a 91 on Metacritic so far.
Yeah, that's why I find it funny when people are like, man, it's really getting mixed reviews, and it's got a 91 on Metacritic.
Right, it's
like,
getting good reviews.
Yeah, it's getting like I think the only thing that's keeping it from getting it even higher than 91 are the bugs, right? And it's like that's something that can be fixed with time, and I'm sure will be fixed with time. I think that's what they've been doing, crunching for the past couple months every time this has been delayed, because it went gold months ago, right? So they've just been working on this day one patch pretty much the whole time. So it's I'm definitely looking forward to it. But man, has it become it's become the thing to hate.
Well, shout out too. I think he had a good point to Kyle Baker on our Discord, pointing out that anytime something's been anticipated for this long, it's like when it comes along, you're either like, great, it lived up to it. And this has also been one of the most hyped, expansive video games. So if it does what it promised, cool. And then if it fails here or there, then wow, this is a disappointment. It's kind of hard to be like, thrilled with something you've been hyping in your mind for 7 years, something like that.
Yeah, about 7 or 8 years. Yeah.
David, you've been hyping it since you were a little baby David, right?
Yeah, since I was
little baby boy.
Since I was a 1.5-year-old 8 years ago. Yeah.
What do you think of this? Are you still hyped after all this news?
Dude, of course I'm hyped, man. I've got the game preloaded on my Xbox right now.
That's why you bought that TV.
That is literally why I wanted the TV. I mean, it's one of the many reasons. I'm super excited. All the haters are making me want to play it even more, just so I can prove them wrong. I'm like fully on the Kool-Aid right now. My machismo is at an all-time 10.
Yeah.
Can't wait to get that big old swinging dick.
Have lots of
in the
sex.
character customizer.
Have lots of sex. 'Cause it sounds like
but
there's a lot of sex in the game.
Are we talking about Cyberpunk or your real life?
Sorry, hold on, guys. Hey, I gotta go. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, from everything I've read from the reviews, the game sounds like it's totally revolutionary in lots of different ways. Sets new precedents for RPGs. Fully delivers on everything that they've promised, as far as the breadth of the world and the way that you can go about things in the game. And so it's I'm super hyped, and I can't wait to get my hands on this thing. And I think that I don't know. That's where I'll leave it right now. Maybe we save the rest for an episode about crunch, since that seems to be what the big controversy about this game has been in the last few months.
Yeah. Also, there's all the dildos in the game. Apparently, the dildos are the collectibles, and they're everywhere. At least according to some.
Got me so hyped for a big old dildo.
Some good textured fellows in there too.
Oh yeah, you got to download the 4K texture pack for those dildos.
And then maybe the most you can't defend this is there's some real some real risks for people that have I can't talk right now. Epileptic. Can somebody say that word?
Epileptic seizures. Epilepsy.
Because apparently there's a lot of sequences with flashing lights, and in particular one sequence that's not skippable that you put your thing on and caused a reviewer to have them. So hopefully they'll patch that and give people the option to remove that. I'm sure they will, because it's generated some buzz, but be aware, I guess, if you're going to go play that game.
Yeah, if you have, there's a great Game Informer game. I also can't talk today. Game Informer.
Game Informer Epilepsy.
Yeah, if you have any kind of blue light setting, some TVs have an eye saving mode. It decreases the blue light and could cause those triggers to decrease.
Good to know. Well, last bit of news that'll take us into our main topic is that some data miners looking at the new old Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon Blade of Light NES release that we just got show that it's using the same emulator as the Wii U used for its virtual console games, which is interesting, I think. Also kind of shows why it's arguably so dark compared to the original. The game, it looks a little bit darker, which that emulator is notorious for doing. It would be nice if it's you can see in some articles about this, that when you look at the other version, you're like, dang, I kind of wish the game was that bright and colorful. It's not a huge difference, but
I bet it'll look great on my OLED.
There you go. Well, we'll dig all into that and Fire Emblem as a whole here in a minute after this short break. All right, so this week we are talking all about the Fire Emblem series. Gonna do a quick retrospective over all the games in light of this new release of the first Fire Emblem game here in the West, and we'll talk about the history of Fire Emblem, some of the gameplay elements, story elements, a little bit about the lore of it, and maybe if we have time, a little speculation about what might come next for Fire Emblem. We'll see. Austin, you're here because your experience with Fire Emblem is more extensive than any of ours. Can you give us an overview of maybe just if you played a lot of the games, most of them, etc.? What's your history with the series?
Like many folks, my first experience was seeing Roy and Marth on Super Smash Brothers Melee, right? And when Sacred Stones came out, we were endeared enough to those characters to kind of check it out. We missed just called Fire Emblem here in the US, but Blazing Blade, when that came out, Sacred Stone, my little brother and I played that one together, backtracked to just Fire Emblem. Then when Path of Radiance and Dawn came out, initially that one was too hard for me. I would play Zelda, and Adam would, that's my younger brother, he would watch and experience the game through watching. And I initially gave up on Path of Radiance. It was pretty tough. But I would watch him play.
What platform is Path of Radiance on?
That's the GameCube.
Okay, right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then the sequel to that came out on the Wii. That was Radiant Dawn. Enjoyed that. Shadow Dragon, so we can get into Shadow Dragon that just released.
Oh, yeah, right. So there was a remake.
Was the remake. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
And that was on the Nintendo DS, correct?
And it was ugly. So I didn't complete that one because I couldn't stand to look at it.
Really?
It was in the early days of the DS, and like what they tried to make 3D and what was still 2D. It was tough. And then so Awakening after that, of course, Fates. I started with Birthright, Conquest. I never quite played through Revelation, which was the DLC third Ultimate Path.
Okay. Is Fates the game that they made multiple, like you have to buy multiple games? They did the Pokemon thing?
The Pokemon, Pokemon Red, Blue.
It's the Pokemon model, yes. And actually, so it had these branching story paths, and you had to buy different cartridges for them. When Three Houses was initially announced, folks were worried that meant there were going to be 3 separate cartridges.
Totally.
Right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm glad they didn't do that.
Oh,
it was a very
absolutely.
smart move. I think the sales would have not been nearly as high for Three Houses if they'd done that.
They can get away with it with Pokemon because it's such a big franchise, but I don't think Fire Emblem's there yet.
Right.
That's right.
It's
And
getting
the
there.
tradition, right? Mm-hmm.
Fire Emblem's growing.
Well, does that mostly lead us up to Three Houses then?
Three Houses, that's right.
And then obviously Heroes as well. You've famously played a lot of Fire Emblem Heroes.
Which is the mobile game, right? We should say.
Yeah.
So, and not long after Three Houses, I gave up Heroes. I was just sinking so much time and money. Honestly, from release till Heroes, every paycheck, I was putting $20 in minimum. And then if I didn't get what I want, I would $5, $10, $15 more dollars.
Eesh.
So, yeah.
Well, we'll go over that maybe in a little bit too, but let's just talk about what Fire Emblem games are like. So, and the first game that again just came out here in the West in its original state, not the ugly ass remake that Austin alluded to, was released in 1990 for the Famicom. So it was a late Famicom NES style game, right? Because the Super Nintendo or Super Famicom came out around that same time. So one thing that strikes me about playing it is it looks better than most NES games. Playing it, like they have better pixel art and that kind of stuff.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it came out the same year as like Kirby's Adventure and what's the game? Star Tropics, or it was like one of the later games like that. Like those are all like pretty impressive looking NES games, and also just like the sheer breadth of like dialogue, and story in this game was really impressive for the time for the NES.
Absolutely.
So that's having played the remake. I was expecting this to be dialed back a lot more game features wise than what I know in Fire Emblem, and I was surprised at just how much content is here is present.
And we should also say that Fire Emblem kind of spawned the genre, right? I think it was, if not the first, one of the first strategy RPG games like this. Is that fair?
I feel just as confident in that statement as you do. I think so. Yeah.
I feel like there were definitely precursors to that, right? Especially on like PC and like DOS-based games, like back in the day. There was a lot of strategy games like that, but definitely as far as consoles are concerned, I think you're pretty safe in assuming that this is really one of the first like strategy RPGs. I also was. I played a little bit of Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light. Unfortunate title, I think. Fire Emblem is what I'll call it from here on out. I played a little bit of that with this new release, and I was very surprised with really my only experience with Fire Emblem before this being Awakening and Three Houses, just how much of the DNA was like straight up there from the very beginning, right? It's like even if like you've just played Three Houses and that's it, you could go back and this just feels like new missions.
It does.
You know what I mean?
And honestly,
honestly,
I think you were about to say the same thing. You say it.
We had kind of talked about this earlier. The simplicity is really nice. You can just jump in, play a round or two. It's real easy. And some of the more the newer Fire Emblem games, you can get really bogged down in menus in between.
Totally.
Yeah, the simplicity of it struck me as being enjoyable. I think it also has a double-edged sword where like it's becoming it adds difficulty, the simplicity does, like because I'm like I need new weapons and it's taking me forever to go take everybody to this one space and buy them and so on and so forth. And if there's some hack for that, let me know. But do you know what I'm talking about? Like, well,
you can buy for the convoy, right, and then pass things out as you're playing.
Can you? I mean, or do you have to take it to the convoy?
Yes. Well, so the convoy and the shops are all on the map. So to interact with them, you do have to move. But you have your knights and you have your Pegasus Knight that you can kind of do that more easily with.
Yeah,
right?
I guess. It's an old game. Yeah. I'm not faulting it for that. There's some.
They've got some pretty nice quality of life stuff in it, right? Like I think the ability to like totally speed up the computer player's turn, and lots of little stuff like that they kind of embedded into the ROM here, really makes the game a lot more playable than, I mean, back in 1990, I probably wouldn't have cared. I would have been like, wow, I'm imagining this is a dragon. But like now I'm like, that's a pixel guy. Please just speed it up.
Yep. And the ability to go back to the beginning of each turn is really nice.
Yeah, I've used that a few times. Well, so maybe we can talk about some of the elements of Fire Emblem beyond it just being a strategy role-playing game, which is permadeath. Which kind of ties into what we're talking about of undoing your turn. A character dies, they are gone for the rest of the game. And so it's amazing to me how attached to these characters who are just tiny little 8-bit sprites that I get. So that's something that they made optional later on in the series, right? But it was is still kind of a big part of it.
Awakening was the first one to have that as an option that you could toggle. Honestly, this is one of the harder boundaries or to entry for a lot of people is that permadeath. You get emotionally connected, and watching them die, it's like, man, I have to start this battle over. I can't lose them. But this playthrough of Shadow Dragon, I have decided, like, if they die, they die. I'm moving forward. And honestly, it's been very liberating.
Nice.
It's a very healthy response.
It is. And to clarify that, what you just said about Awakening 2, I think there have been like 16 Fire Emblem games, some of which are remakes, I think about 3, and Awakening's like the 14th. So they didn't introduce the removal or the option to turn off permadeath until pretty recently. Also,
I mean, that you're right, Austin. Like, that's the point. Like, Awakening is the game that shot Fire Emblem into the public consciousness, right? Like, it had always been so niche before that, but Awakening like sold really, really well, and it's only been skyrocketing since then.
That's right. And that does also touch on another topic that we have a little later down, but Awakening is the first one that really lives into its anime-ness, I think, of
totally.
And I think that was overall good for the series.
Yeah.
Another thing that's associated with the series, at least in part, is the weapon triangle, which I've never played a game with it. But I think that's like sort of a rock, paper, scissors element, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, swords beats axes, axes beats lances, lances beats swords.
So it is like Pokemon.
But that was a big part of the series for some time, not in the original games, right? But introduced later and then removed for the first time in a while for Three Houses. Is that correct?
Yeah, so Genealogy of the Holy War was 1996. Super Famicom introduced the weapons triangle, as well as 2 generations in the story and the whole breeding situation. And then once again, the Gaiden remake wheeled us back away from it. That was right before Three Houses in 2017. And so with Three Houses, they move forward without
Another
it.
way that Fire Emblem is like Pokemon breeding. Can you explain that? You can have characters have kids, right? Is that?
Yeah. So
in some of the games, not in all of them, right?
That's right. And who you pair up depends on what characters you do or don't get and what their stats are. So some is like the character is assigned to the mom and then their stats come from the dad, or vice versa, depending on the game.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if breeding is the term I'm really comfortable with for that mechanic, but
matchmaking.
Yeah,
just
sure.
for Matt. Yeah.
Yeah.
They have sex and then they have babies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Let's call
breeding.
Let's call it a progenation.
And then you kind of touched on this, but yeah, anime, this sort of fan service waifu is something else that's associated with the series more recently, of course, but and this is sort of the art style and tropes that they use and that kind of thing, at least recently.
Well, and that's, it's coming from Japan and it has been very Japanese, but it's been inspired by Western fantasy a lot. And once again, Awakening was just like, you want costumes that don't make sense and giant boobs, like, we're here for you. We've got that.
Yeah, they've got that in Fire Emblem. So yeah, Fire Emblem was a Japan only series for the first 10 or so years and until Smash, right? Talking about the history of this game and until Smash Brothers Melee in 2001, and then the next Fire Emblem game came over to the West as Fire Emblem, but is known as the Blazing Blade. But a lot of people were introduced here in the States and in other parts of the West to Fire Emblem from Smash Brothers, and they played on that in the ad for this. And yeah, you main Marth, right, David?
Yeah, Marth. White Marth is my boy in Smash. That's my main character that I play as. Yeah, Melee was my first introduction. I mean, it was like an interesting character because he had that mystique of like, oh, this is a Japan only game, and it was like the early days of the internet still. So you're like,
what is
all these like
it?
schoolyard rumors about like what Fire Emblem is and shit like that, and then it's like, so it always had this kind of like legend kind of status of a game series, right? And then and then it was also confusing whenever they first started coming out because, like you said, like the first one was called Fire Emblem, but there were tons of Fire Emblem games before that. So you're like, am I missing the story?
Yeah, where's Marth?
So it's exactly. And where the fuck is Marth? And so it's like it's always been like an interesting franchise in that way. And I'm glad to see. I think like them releasing this NES game was a great idea. I think it just happened a little bit too late.
I also, but real quickly, while we're talking about the Smash thing, I playing this Fire Emblem game. Now I'm like, Sakurai is so good at creating characters. Marth looks and moves the same in Smash as he does in this old NES game.
Oh,
like
yeah.
It's just so striking. His poses and
his final Smash
and stuff. It just like, oh, he does such a good job of that. I just feel like that's something that struck me seeing Marth move in this 8-bit style.
Totally. Yeah, like Mega Man too, like the way that it's like crazy how Mega Man looks. But sorry, you were saying, Austin?
Oh yeah. It is a little bit of a funny, or it was a funny decision for Blazing Blade to be the first Western release because it is a prequel to Roy's game, so you don't play either Marth or Roy in it, right? And so it always feels like this mismatched thing as well. If you look at the history, that there was probably this great opportunity. I think a lot of people bought that game and said, "Where's Marth and Roy?"
It's crazy that you play as Lucas from Mother 3 in the game.
But after that one, the Fire Emblem Blazing Blade game, most of them have come west. I think maybe not all of them, but most of them have come west, and it seems like Awakening, like we talked about, was the big one that kind of blew it up. And unless there's anything else in the history I want to talk about, I thought we could maybe move. I mean, this is still kind of the history on to sort of the more recent releases of Fire Emblem games. Like the mobile game Heroes came out in 2017, and it's Nintendo's most successful mobile game. Austin, you played it a lot. You know, people are still playing it a lot. What's the draw to that game?
For me, it's fast. It is the Fire Emblem formula. You've got the grid. You've got your units. You have 3 different abilities, weapons. There are so many characters, and I was there when they were still releasing characters for the very first time into the game, with such a huge roster of characters in the game's history. It was perfect for the gacha formula, right? So it's
it really feels like they stuck the landing on the mobile gacha style for that game, like early on, and they've just been sticking with it.
I think maybe because it's a Nintendo IP that has this history where all these different characters and people want them. Like you try to think of like if they made a gacha Zelda game, there's only a handful of. I mean, I guess there's a lot there too.
Just play Hyrule Warriors.
Yeah, I said that, and then I was like, wait, there is a lot actually. But it fit well, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. And then another sort of spin-off Fire Emblem game was the Warriors game, which seems to have done okay. A lot of people seem to have played that, which also came out in 2017.
Did any of y'all play that one?
I didn't.
I did not, but like I worked at a movie rental shop for a while. We don't need to talk about that, but I one of my coworkers really loved Fire Emblem Warriors, so I played some co-op with her, which was quite a bit of fun. I enjoyed it a lot. It was cool because it was taking the Warriors style, but then adding in like light strategy elements. So I thought that was kind of a cool blend of the two genres there.
Yeah, and
how's your cat doing, David?
My cat?
I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. The movie rental story reminded me of your cat experimental drugs story.
Oh, right.
So.
Yeah. My cat, thank you for asking. My cat is fine. I think actually it was right over here.
Well, something that I wanted to talk about when we talked about the new Hyrule Warriors game is that this Fire Emblem Warriors game exists. And what don't you think that with the success of these games, Nintendo's probably going to do another Warriors game on something?
Absolutely.
Yeah, they've got to.
I think we're going to see more of those. Star Fox. That'd be interesting.
Seriously, I'm down for any Star Fox game. But we don't have to talk about it.
But then in 2019, the Fire Emblem Three Houses game came out. And at least here in America, this seems like to have been a huge explosion for Fire Emblem. I played, this is my first Fire Emblem game. It's a great game. It's got a lot of content. And it also introduced some new elements for Fire Emblem, like the monastery sort of gameplay element, which is a whole new aspect of the game where you can walk around and interact with the characters, and probably has more developed characters for that reason.
Yeah. This is a really good thing for Fire Emblem, I think. I think that like this is the element that like made it really fun for Sasha and I to play this game. It's like what made her really connected to the characters, and then conversely also just like made it really fun for us to make decisions, like not only about what we do on the battlefield, but like what we do just with relationships, right? And like, and especially now, like Sasha's been playing Persona 5 recently, and it's like watching her play that, it's like, man, they really just took a lot of these elements from the Persona series and like kind of fit them seamlessly into Fire Emblem. And I think it's a really good move and a really good direction for the series to be going in personally.
It was especially a first good step into the home console, the more 3D space for the series. I will be a little disappointed if the next 3D Fire Emblem just has another 3D hub where you interact with the characters. I will want a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think, maybe we should talk about that right now then, because it might be a natural time. Like what would the next, obviously this game came out, 2019, and they put out DLC beginning of this year. So we're probably not going to see another Fire Emblem game. But maybe we will, because they have 16 games over the last 30 years. So
I wouldn't be surprised to see another one on the Switch.
yeah, I think that's quite possible. What would you guys want to see in it, or what? I think hopefully they bring back that monastery element and all of the stuff you can do with your students, and the ability to skip it or not, and all that was great. But what are what are you hinting at, Austin? That you want a little more freedom to move around or something?
Yeah, I wish there were more 3D spaces in the next one.
That makes sense. Because really, there's only the monastery and, spoilers, another area.
Sure.
But it's very much like the monastery, and it doesn't feel any different. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool if they expanded that idea into... Because Three Houses has this great caveat of being about 3 different countries, right? Or like 3 different kingdoms or whatever, that are kind of under the banner of this one continent. And I think that if they had kind of individual stories in each one of those 3 with their own relationships that you kind of craft as you're going, and then also have the overarching hub of the monastery, I think like that is a really good idea to move forward. Just kind of adding the variety of the kinds of characters that you'd be seeing. You know what I mean? I mean, it's also nice to see the 3 cultures all mashed up within one house in the monastery, right? Like that was a big part of the story that was really interesting about Three Houses.
Absolutely.
Was how these different cultures interact with each other. But yeah, I just think like expanding that idea, they can only go, bigger from here, right? Like as long as they want to keep this style, which I doubt they'd move away from.
I doubt it too.
Absolutely.
I also hope that you can actually interact with things like the stairs and stuff. I found the 3D aspect of it a little bit frustrating of like, why did you put stairs here if I can't climb them and that kind of thing, where it felt like you were kind of gated off, and that maybe they really lean into that part of it a little bit more.
I want to be able to pet the dogs and cats without the DLC.
That is a fucked up thing to put behind a paywall.
Something I have enjoyed about the evolution from Fates to Three Houses is that branching story paths. I feel like they have evolved. Like Fates was good, but Three Houses was a better execution of that idea. And I hope that continues to be a staple moving forward.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I'd love that.
And then maybe we can end with the lore. David, you got more.
Yeah, real quick. I think something that I'd like to see, basically at my job, like when Three Houses came out, and then for like pretty much a year after Three Houses came out, like anytime I'd kind of be walking by the water cooler, like the only thing I would hear anybody talking about is like Three Houses. I feel like there were multiple like Three Houses book clubs going on like at my work basically. And everybody was just talking about like how they had interacted with the characters and their take on the relationships. And that I think is such a great untapped thing for Nintendo, is like adding some sort of multiplayer community based like element to this game.
That'd be cool.
Like I think that I don't know if there have been multiplayer, like competitive multiplayer Fire Emblem games in the past, but like I think
weren't
that
there a
is
few
like,
modes in some of the games, I think, but maybe just sort of side things.
I think maybe there was something in Awakening, your Fates. You could build a castle,
right,
and then other people could come in, and you could see how many turns it takes people to defeat it.
See, I mean, that's something, right? But I mean, like, but I think like a solid like multiplayer, like, because I mean, theoretically, the CPU is just acting like a person. You know what I mean? So like having another player be able to play multiplayer, and then having these characters that you've built and grown attached to fight against other people's versions of those characters or their own characters or whatever. I think something like that, adding in the social element and then kind of branching it into online, I think if they could figure out a way to do that they would have a really big hit, especially with like Animal Crossing, which is like really a single player experience that Nintendo somehow turned into like the multiplayer game of 2020. You know what I mean? Like if they can do that, I think with something as rich in lore and character as Fire Emblem, I think they'd really be able to do that really well if they branched into online multiplayer.
Yeah. David, you talking about the watercolor, my partner and I, Daniel, he is not a gamer. oddly, Breath of the Wild was like his first kind of console gaming experience. He really got into that. But Fire Emblem, 3 months, we were playing different paths, different stories, and we still to this day banter back and forth about our opinions about Lady Rhea and who was right and wrong. Like, it's still to this day pretty contentious. So.
Yeah, I was surprised because I was only like a little bit into the game, and I heard somebody like talk about Sylvain, and I was like, oh man, I actually really like Sylvain. He's like one of my main guys. And they were like, dude, Sylvain is so toxic. And like everybody started jumping down my throat. They're like, Sylvain is the worst. What are you talking about? I was like, I need to play more of this game. Like, I know what I'm talking about.
Well, that's a good point. And that maybe leads us into the lore that these games have deep lore and deep, especially in Three Houses, deep character development where you know different people can have different takes about who's right and who's wrong and the politics of it. Like you said, Austin, these games are based, even though they're Japanese, based on sort of a Western, fantasy tropes, I guess, and in particular, sort of a Western church in Three Houses. Can you talk a little bit about the big picture of the lore? You know, are all these games in the same universe, or is this more of a Zelda situation?
Yeah, so Intelligent Systems has 4 arcs that they officially recognize. So the games with Marth, which is Shadow Dragon, Gaiden, Mystery of Fire Emblem, and then Awakening, are all one arc, which is called the Arcania or the Valentia arc, because there's 2 different nations that it kind of jumps between depending on the game. Then there's the genealogy of the Holy War. There's a time jump in there, and Thracia 776 is like what happened in between that we didn't see during that game. Blazing Blade and Binding Blade are together, and then Path of Radiance and Path of Dawn are a coupling as well.
So there's sort of 4 stories, I guess, that can be broken into.
That's right. And so then there are all kinds of fan theories about trying to fit all 16 or sometimes even 17 with heroes being canon. That's out there, but it's highly debated and contentious. I watched in research for this Source Gaming video that I found mostly I like his theory where he gets almost all of them in one continuous timeline.
Would you prefer it that way if they were all connected?
So I went to seminary and studied theology and the Bible, and I kind of like the idea of things being open to interpretation, of it being all of these open, vague things, and people can draw different lines and connections, and kind of accepting that there's not one pure continuous story. I like the vague.
We don't want any Fire Emblem fundamentalists, right? Like
that's right.
They're all in one world, and it is the literal truth.
That's right. And most of the stories though follow like you're one warrior or lord, and you're kind of in this kind of small battle that then turns into a war, and then that war turns into something between gods, and it spans millennia, or ties into this deep lore that goes beyond just a single conflict or a single war.
Cool.
That's cool. I mean, it's more lore than a lot of Nintendo games get.
For sure. It's more story and lore.
Yeah, more cohesion across games, but
absolutely. A lot of the conversation trying to connect these storylines also is about the continents and the nations, and people analyze the maps to see how they are not connected. The Path of Radiance and Dawn stories, mild spoilers, there is a goddess who flooded the whole world at some point in that story. And at the end, she starts receding the tide. So new lands start forming. So that kind of gives them narrative to say that's why the map is always shifting.
Yeah, I'm getting Hyrule Historia flashbacks right now from that shit. I have a question, Austin, as we're like maybe wrapping up here.
Sure.
For a listener who Three Houses was their first Fire Emblem game, or even maybe somebody who hasn't even played Three Houses yet, like where would you say they kind of go next? We've got tons of Fire Emblem games. Like, what do you think is like a really good kind of next stepping point in the Fire Emblem series for someone whose first game was on the Switch.
For sure. If if you haven't played Three Houses, I would say that is a great jumping on point. But if you've played that and you're looking for more, if you have a DS, I would honestly pick up Awakening. It is a strong entry. It has the children mechanic, which just don't research and just play naturally.
We're calling it breeding.
That's right.
I bred my wife.
I mean, before playing Awakening, sometimes I like sit down and make charts and plan out way in advance who's marrying who, like all kinds of stuff. But I would say Awakening is the next one to check out. I would avoid Fates. Honestly, not my favorite characters, not my favorite story. It's complicated with the branching paths being behind paid walls, so you have to purchase either birthrights or conquest.
Right.
I would even say going back to the Sacred Stones, because it was the first one that allowed you to grind experience and gold. Be a good one.
That's how I beat my RPGs. I grind. So
yeah. What about the hold on, I have to look at the name. What about Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light, the new game that's only on the eShop until March 31st? Would you say that is like a good game to go? Like, is it worth going back and playing the original NES game if you're kind of new to the series?
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. I would recommend it. It is kind of this weird FOMO nostalgia, right? It's we have seen Nintendo playing on our sense of nostalgia and wanting to return to that. So it's like you're finally playing that game that you really missed out on.
I feel that.
I have found it satisfying.
I feel that because it doesn't. It's very much different gameplay, but it looks a little bit like the first Final Fantasy game. And I kind of like instantly have this weird nostalgia for a game I've never played because it has that vibe.
Yeah. It's worth checking out.
Into it.
I've got a question for Matt. What do you think about all this?
Well, I had a follow-up question to what David was asking.
Oh, okay.
Like to hear, I've never played a Fire Emblem game, so that's why there's a great Matt Stoner silence of 2020 in this episode. But the way that y'all talk about
I thought you were dead, dude.
Well, I am dead inside. My soul is dead. But I'm alive on the outside. The way that y'all talk about Fire Emblem is the way that I think and feel about Xenoblade. And I feel like there's some like crossover between the two games of like, there's always a person who's like, I've been thinking about getting into Xenoblade. Which should I start first? And I feel like the question is, if you're like me, I like anime games. I'll just admit it. That's why I'm into Xenoblade. If you're trying to do like an elevator pitch, a Fire Emblem to like, why should someone who enjoys those types of games or other RPGs that are similar nature, what would that pitch might be to those fans to play a Fire Emblem?
Absolutely. I think if what you look for in your RPG is customizability, and I also think one of the greatest strengths of Fire Emblem that permadeath speaks to, that the breeding speaks to, the separate paths speaks to, is replayability. So each time you have a different experience, your experience is going to be very different from your friends. They might have lost someone you didn't lose. You decided to pair up new people. You made different decisions.
But everybody can agree Sylvain is an asshole.
That's right.
He's a womanizer.
Mm-hmm.
That means like absolutely nothing to me.
Well, dude, Matt, I'm surprised you don't play Fire Emblem. Like, seriously, I feel like you would love Three Houses.
Yeah.
I, too, am very surprised I've never played any Fire Emblem.
It was just on sale for like $35.
It's also a very character-driven game.
I like sales and characters.
All right, yeah, we gotta wrap this up.
Listen, we're all gonna replay Three Houses with Matt, and we'll all start our own Fire Emblem book club. And if Matt, you bail out of this after a week, I will fucking kill you.
If I'm going to commit to something, I'm going to fucking commit. So let's do this Three Houses shit.
No. Let's start with Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light and work our way through the 16 games as a book club.
All right, y'all.
Okay, will you do that? Will you finish them, David?
No, of course not. This is a joke.
Well, I think we've talked a lot about Fire Emblem. Unless somebody has some last thing they want to squeak in, we'll wrap this up, and we'd love to hear from our listeners if you like Fire Emblem and what you like about it, or something we missed. But anything somebody wants to add?
Cool. Real quick, I think this is a missed opportunity for Nintendo to just make a collection, all of the Fire Emblems that have never been localized, just at once. Like, you know, old Mega Mans from Capcom, the Sonic collection. I feel like I am happy with my purchase, and I'm having a good time with Shadow Dragon. I don't understand why we didn't get a bundle of all of these games all together.
Fair enough.
Hey, man, they will be releasing each one individually for $5 to $20 each.
For a limited time only.
Exactly. You can get them from March 31st to April 4th.
Cool. Well, that's Fire Emblem for now, and we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk about all the games we've been playing recently. So I don't really have a whole lot to report, friends. I've been playing some of the same games I've been playing. We talked all about Fire Emblem, which is the main new game I've been playing. I don't think I have any really good anecdotes. Just playing some Animal Crossing to chill out, and some Xenoblade Chronicles 2 when I want some story, and some Fire Emblem, which has been a great game to play like while watching TV and stuff because of the turn-based nature of it. Though I do like that music. We didn't talk about that. The 8-bit music.
It
does.
Oh, in the NES Fire Emblem?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I was playing it on my TV, and Sasha was like nearby, and she was just like humming it along with it and like bobbing her head. And I was like, yo, all right, Sasha's into the beat.
Yeah, but that's what I've been playing. So nothing, no great anecdotes.
I'll go next. I've been playing one game. I got back into Apex Legends. I don't know if I said this last week. But some friends pulled me back into it. There's a new season, whole new map. And I'm back in the lore. I just love Respawn and what they do with first person shooter movement. It's just so sleek and so slick. And they've really built out some of the lore. I'm just so impressed by all of Respawn's games and engines.
Yeah, I still haven't played Apex, but I did love just moving around in Titanfall, right? Like that's like so fun to just run around. You don't even have to be fighting anybody, just like running on walls and jetpacking and meching. It's a lot of fun.
Such an important part of games, right? Like, or
Yes.
like if you nail that, then there's a lot of room for other problems to exist and not be a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was playing with a good buddy of mine in that first season, it's a hard game. The skill level is so high, and you die so much. The only reason he kept on playing it was because the movement was so satisfying, and that kept him in because it was so fun to move around, to jump, and use some of the like clamber mechanics.
If you're going to make a difficult game, make it fun to move around. That's a true.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
a true thing.
Yeah.
Totally.
Have you played Kunai?
Hollow Knight.
Good example.
Hollow Knight is a great example of that too. It's really
Hollow Knight's a great
satisfying to
example.
move around in Hollow Knight, and it's really tough.
Any game that has like a swipe down mechanic that makes you bounce off the enemies is aces in my book. I'll go next. I didn't even mention this last week because I'm a fucking idiot, but I've been playing the shit out of Picross S5. I mean, this is not a huge surprise if you've been listening to this podcast ever. But yes, I've been very much enjoying Picross S5. It hits all the same marks. I'm playing it with 0 assist or whatever. So if I fuck up, I just have to quit the puzzle and start over in most cases. But it's also fun to try to like work yourself out of holes of your own creation by like one false square that you've put in. So it's a ton of fun. I'm having a great time. Looks great on my OLED TV. I have been playing some more Mario 35. Been doing really well, actually. I right before we played, right before we recorded tonight, I played one and I lost, but I was on like a 3 or 4 win streak before that. So I'm trying to really get back into that game. I love it. I played a little bit of the Tetris 99 Mario All-Stars Tetris Maximus Cup that happened recently, and that was a lot of fun to get back into Tetris 99. I love that game so much. Even if I win at that game way less than I win at Mario 35, occasionally I still do win Tetris 99. And then lastly, I'll say I picked up I actually been playing 2 games on my Xbox. One was the Turing Test, which is a game that's leaving Game Pass soon. It's like a Portal-esque first-person shooter puzzle game, which I would recommend if you're into that kind of thing. I don't know if we'll finish it, but it's pretty. And then the other game I've been playing is Control, which did drop on Game Pass, and I'm really, really loving Control. And this game is available on Switch, the cloud version anyway. And yeah, Control is excellent. Matt, I know this was probably your game of the year last year. I know you really enjoyed this game quite a bit. I'm loving it. It's definitely got some like cheese every once in a while, but like the aesthetic of the game, the sound design of the game, the visuals, the way their character moves and controls, pun absolutely intended, all feel really, really great. I think I've just gotten to the point where I have my dodge. So I've probably got a good bit of the game ahead of me, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
But I'm loving it so far. This is a game that I love to play on Xbox because I'll just plug the headphones into the controller and like turn off all the lights and just like have the audio pump straight into my ears, and the visuals pump straight into my eyes. And and I'm totally addicted to reading all the little dossiers that you find throughout the world. It really like kind of crafts an interesting story. So yeah, Control is great. I'm loving it so far, and I'm loving the Metroidvania style in 3D. It's great. Austin, what have you been playing this past week?
I've been playing Age of Calamity. Mifa is my queen. She is my favorite character. There's some others you get later on I won't talk about that I enjoy. There's a character that their move set is rhythm based, and I really want to be good at it, and I want to play as that character, but it's a struggle. And then I've been playing Fire Emblem, of course. I impulse bought Dark Dawn Golden Sun number 3.
Oh,
and it's trash. So
I was not expecting that.
So I'm a big fan of the first 2 games, and I was like, man, I was home for Christmas once, played Adam's game. I'm gonna buy my own and really like dig into this because I'm feeling nostalgia. I want to re-enter this world, and it feels like fan fiction of the original. Everything is like they're children and just different enough, and it feels really cheap and uninspired to me, and I'm really disappointed by it.
I feel like I saw some totally non-credible leak that they might be working on new Golden Sun games, or a new Golden Sun.
I feel like that rumor comes up every single year.
That's why I hadn't mentioned it until you brought it up. So maybe there's there's a hope for them to make a better one after that one.
Yeah. Every 9 months, YouTube video. Evidence. New Golden Sun right around the corner.
Confirmed.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Cool. And then I think that does it for this week's episode. Austin, thank you so much for coming on to talk to us.
It was a pleasure. Thank you all so much for having me back.
And thanks to Corduroy, who does our music. If you want to find me, Patrick, online, I am PDYX.
Hey, I'm on Twitter, Matthew, Mathyouu.
I'm pretty much everywhere on the internet at Monolith Fiji. And what about you, Austin? Where can people find you?
Instagram, other places, Cookie Cat Courts. Anything that sounds like a C is a Q. That's it.
Very good. Awesome. Very good. If you'd like to find our show on social media, we are at Switch Headz on Twitter, at Super Switch Headz on Instagram and Facebook. Like we said earlier in the show, we're doing a watch of the Game Awards on our Facebook group and or Discord. Make sure you check out both of those. Facebook group of Switch Headz with a Z, all caps. You'll be able to find it. And our Discord will have a link to in the description of this episode. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to this episode on Schoolin' Yo Ass on some Fire Emblem. It was a total delight to have you on, Austin. Next week, we're going to be talking about our reactions to the Game Awards with guest Michael Kavanagh, who I actually have been playing some Halo co-op with this past week. A little bit of a shout out, forgot to say that. But we'll be looking forward to that next week. Any last minute predictions on what we think is winning game of the year?
Control again.
Okay, Control. There we go. Control is winning again, folks.
Hades.
Yeah. We'll see. Until then, we'll see you next week. You know the drill, folks. There's still a pandemic on. Maybe reconsider those Christmas plans. Continue to wash your hands. Continue to wear a mask. Continue to be the best person that you can be. We love you very much. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.